The morning sun was shining over the little town as Daniel wiped the sweat from his forehead. His shirt already had patches of grease, but that was nothing new. He had been working as a mechanic for years, and every day was more or less the same. Cars lined up outside the garage, customers hurried in and out, and the boss kept shouting about getting things done faster. For Daniel, fixing cars was not just a job. It was something he was proud of. He believed every machine had a heart, and every repair was a way to bring life back into something broken. He wasn't the type of man who chased after money or fancy titles. All he wanted was to do his work well and return home with enough to support his family. People in the neighborhood knew him for his honest smile and kind nature. Whenever someone needed help, he never thought twice before offering a hand. But his boss, Mr. Carson, didn't see the world the same way. For him, kindness didn't pay bills. All that mattered was profit, speed, and strict rules. It was one of those afternoons when the air was hot and heavy with the smell of oil and smoke. Daniel was tightening the bolts on a customer's car engine when he noticed something unusual outside the shop window. An elderly woman was slowly walking her bicycle along the sidewalk. The bike's chain had slipped off, and one of the tires looked flat. She carried 2 grocery bags in her hands, which made it harder for her to manage. Her face was tired, and it was clear she had been walking for quite a while. Daniel paused for a moment, watching her struggle. A voice inside him said, "She needs help." But he also knew how his boss would react. Mr. Carson didn't like when employees got distracted from paying jobs. Still, Daniel couldn't ignore what he saw. He put down his wrench, wiped his hands on a cloth, and walked outside. "Ma'am, do you need a little help with that?" he asked gently. The old woman looked up, surprised but grateful. "Oh, son, I didn't want to trouble anyone. My bike just stopped working, and I still have a long way to go. I thought I could push it home, but these bags are heavy." Daniel smiled. "Don't worry, let me take a look. It won't take long." Her eyes softened with relief as she handed him the bike. He leaned it against the wall and quickly checked the problem. The chain had slipped off the gear, but it was an easy fix. He also noticed the tire was low, so he carried the bike inside the shop and pumped some air into it. His hands moved quickly, practiced from years of working on engines and machines far more complex than a bicycle. While he worked, the old lady stood by, holding her groceries and watching him with quiet gratitude. She told him her name was Mrs. Thompson, and she lived on the far side of town. Every week she came to buy groceries, and the bike was her only way to travel. Without it, she would be stranded. Within minutes, Daniel had the bike working like new again. He handed it back with a warm smile. "There you go. Good as new. It should run smoothly now." Mrs. Thompson's face lit up with joy. "Oh, thank you, young man. You don't know how much this means to me. I don't have much to give, but may God bless you for your kindness." Daniel shook his head. "No payment needed, ma'am. Just take care of yourself and ride safely." The woman's eyes grew moist as she placed her groceries in the basket and climbed onto the seat. Before leaving, she looked back at him and said, "The world needs more people like you." Then she pedaled away, her smile brighter than the afternoon sun. Daniel felt a deep sense of satisfaction. To him, helping her was more rewarding than fixing a dozen cars for money. He returned to his workbench, unaware that someone had been watching the whole time. Mr. Carson had been standing near the office door, arms crossed and face dark with anger. He had seen Daniel step away from his assigned work, spend valuable time on something that brought in no money, and even use the shop's air pump without charging a single coin. For Carson, this was unacceptable. He believed kindness was weakness, and generosity was nothing but a waste. But Daniel didn't notice his boss's glare. His mind was still on the old woman's smile. For him, Small acts of goodness mattered more than rules written on a wall. He picked up his wrench again and continued with the unfinished car, humming a quiet tune as though nothing had happened. What Daniel did not know was that this simple choice to help a stranger with no thought of reward was about to change his life forever. At that moment, he was just being himself, a man who believed in doing good whenever he had the chance. He had no idea that his kindness would lead to a storm of events waiting just around the corner. The shop was buzzing with the usual noise, the clanking of tools and the sound of engines starting and stopping. But inside Daniel's heart, there was a quiet peace. Helping someone in need, no matter how small the act, always left him feeling lighter, as though the weight of the world had eased just a little. He didn't think about the risks, and he didn't imagine the consequences. To him, kindness never needed a reason. As the day moved forward, the heat grew stronger, and customers kept coming in with their vehicles. Daniel continued working, unaware that the decision he made in those few minutes would soon be the turning point of his entire story. In life, some choices seem small at first, just fixing a chain on a bicycle, just offering a hand to someone in trouble. But often, those very choices are the ones that shape destiny. And for Daniel, destiny had already begun to shift, even if he didn't see it yet. The rest of the afternoon moved along as usual. Daniel worked quietly on the cars, finishing one repair and then starting another. He thought no more about the old lady's bicycle, except for the small feeling of joy that still warmed his heart. He had helped someone, and that was enough for him. But in the corner of the garage, Mr. Carson's anger was building. He had seen every moment of Daniel's little act of kindness, and in his eyes, it was nothing but wasted time. Mr. Carson was a man who measured everything in money. If something didn't bring profit, it had no value. He didn't understand Daniel's way of thinking, and he didn't care to. To him, Daniel's actions were foolish, even dangerous, because they might encourage other workers to waste time too. The more he thought about it, the more his face grew red with frustration. By the time the last car for the day was being checked, Mr. Carson had made up his mind. He would not let this pass. He waited until the customers left and then called Daniel over. "Daniel." His voice was sharp and loud, echoing through the garage. "Come here. Now." Daniel wiped his hands on his cloth and walked over, a little surprised by the tone. "Yes, sir." Mr. Carson's eyes narrowed. "Do you think this is a charity house? Do you think I pay you to play the hero for old ladies on bicycles?" Daniel's heart sank. He realized what this was about. He opened his mouth to explain, but Mr. Carson didn't let him. "You left a paying customer's car to waste time on some broken-down bike that isn't even part of our business. Do you know how much money this shop loses when workers like you do things that don't matter?" Daniel took a deep breath. His voice was calm, though his chest was tight. "Sir," the woman was struggling. "It only took a few minutes to fix her chain and pump the tire. She couldn't carry her groceries and push the bike at the same time. I couldn't just ignore her." Mr. Carson slammed his fist on the desk, making the tools nearby rattle. "I don't care if she was carrying the world on her shoulders. This is a business, not a charity. And you will follow the rules of this business. We do not work for free. Do you understand?" The garage had grown quiet. Other workers pretended to keep working, but their ears were tuned to every word. Everyone respected Daniel, and no one liked the boss's harshness, but nobody dared to speak. Daniel's eyes met Mr. Carson's. There was no anger in them, only honesty. "Sir, sometimes doing the right thing matters more than money. She needed help, and I was there. That's all." The words only fueled Mr. Carson's fury. His face turned red, and his voice rose louder. "Enough. If you care so much about helping people for free, then go out and do it on your own time. As of today, you're finished here. Pack your things and leave. You're fired." A heavy silence filled the room. The sound of engines stopped. The clinking of tools went quiet. Everyone froze, shocked by the sudden decision. Daniel stood still for a moment, letting the words sink in. Fired? For fixing a bicycle? For showing kindness? His chest ached, but he did not want to beg. His pride and dignity would not allow it. He quietly nodded, then turned to his workbench. He picked up his small toolbox, the one he had carried for years, and wiped the grease off his hands one last time. As he walked toward the exit, the other mechanics looked at him with sympathy. A few wanted to speak up, but fear of losing their own jobs kept them silent. Only one young apprentice whispered as Daniel passed by, "We're proud of you, sir." Daniel gave the boy a small smile, then stepped outside. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. He stood for a moment, breathing in the evening air. His heart was heavy, but not because of losing the job. It was because he had been punished for something he believed was right. Still, deep inside, he knew he would not change a thing if given the chance again. He would always choose kindness over rules written by someone who cared only about profit. Daniel walked home slowly, his toolbox in his hand. The streets were busy with people heading back from work. A few neighbors waved at him, but he only smiled faintly. His mind was crowded with thoughts. How would he tell his wife? How would he explain to his children that he no longer had a job? By the time he reached home, the street lights had come on. His little house stood warmly at the corner, and the sound of his children playing in the yard reached his ears. Their laughter was like music, but it also pierced his heart. He pushed the worry aside, forcing a smile as he stepped inside. His wife, Clara, noticed the heaviness in his eyes right away. "Daniel, what happened? You look troubled." He placed the toolbox on the floor and sat down. "Clara, I lost my job today." Her eyes widened. "What? Why? What happened?" He told her the whole story: the old lady with the bicycle, the quick repair, and the way Mr. Carson exploded with anger. Clara listened carefully, her expression softening as he spoke. When he finished, she took his hand and squeezed it gently. "You did the right thing, Daniel," she said firmly. "Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. A job can be replaced, but a good heart cannot. Our children will grow up knowing their father is a man of kindness, and that matters more than anything." Her words soothed him, though the worry still sat in his chest like a heavy stone. He hugged his children tightly that night, listening to their innocent chatter, and wondered how he would protect this little family without steady income. News of what had happened spread quickly through the neighborhood. Some neighbors shook their heads at Mr. Carson's cruelty. Others clapped Daniel on the back, telling him he was brave. But praise did not pay bills, and Daniel knew that the next morning he would wake up unemployed. That night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, sleep refused to come. His mind replayed the events of the day: the old lady's grateful smile, Mr. Carson's angry face, the silence of the garage, the words "you're fired" ringing over and over. He thought about going to other garages in town to ask for work. But he also knew Mr. Carson had influence, word of his firing might spread, and no one might want to hire him. He tried to push the thoughts aside, but they returned again and again, making his chest heavy with worry. Still, when he closed his eyes, the one memory that rose above all others was the old woman's face. The way her eyes had softened when he helped her. The way she blessed him with her words. That memory brought him a strange kind of peace. He whispered to himself, "I don't regret it. No matter what happens, I don't regret it." And with that thought, Daniel finally drifted into restless sleep, not knowing that the choice he had made today, the choice that cost him his job, was about to open the door to something far greater than he could ever imagine. The night after Daniel lost his job felt endless. He lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing with thoughts that would not rest. The room was quiet except for the sound of his children's soft breathing in the next room and the steady rhythm of the ceiling fan above him. But inside his heart, there was no peace. He kept replaying the day in his head. The old woman's broken bicycle, her tired smile when he helped her, and then the storm that followed at the garage. Mr. Carson's angry face, the words "you're fired," and the silence of the other workers, they circled in his memory like shadows. No matter how much he tried to push them away, they kept returning. Daniel turned on his side and looked at his wife. Clara was asleep, her face calm even in the dim light. She had told him earlier not to lose heart, that kindness was worth more than money. Her words comforted him, but the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his chest. How would he pay the bills? How would he buy food for the children? A man's heart can be strong, but when he worries about his family, it becomes heavy as stone. Hours passed slowly, and Daniel finally drifted into a restless sleep just before dawn. But the rest did not last long. He woke early, long before the sun rose, and sat by the window, watching the quiet street outside. The world was calm, but inside him, a storm still raged. When the morning light crept through the curtains, his children came running into the room, full of laughter. They climbed onto his lap, asking him to play before breakfast. Their innocent joy made him smile, even though his heart was heavy. He hugged them close, promising himself that no matter what, he would not let them suffer. After breakfast, Daniel stepped outside with his toolbox in hand. He did not know exactly where to go, but he thought of visiting other garages in town. Perhaps someone would give him work, even if only for a few days. He could not sit idle. The walk to the town center felt long that day. His neighbors waved to him, some with sympathy in their eyes. News of his firing had spread quickly, as it always did in small towns. A few men clapped him on the shoulder, saying, "You did the right thing, Daniel." Others whispered, "Carson is too cruel. One day he'll regret it." Daniel nodded politely but said little. Their words were kind, but they did not change the reality. Praise would not fill his children's stomachs. He visited the first garage, a small shop run by an old acquaintance. The man listened carefully, then shook his head. "I would hire you in a moment, Daniel, but you know how it is. Carson has influence in this town. If I take you, he'll make trouble for me. I can't risk it." Daniel thanked him and moved on. At the second garage, the response was the same. At the third, too. Everywhere he went, he was told the same thing: his skills were excellent, but no one wanted to anger Mr. Carson. It felt as if invisible doors were closing in front of him, one after another. By noon, Daniel returned home tired and discouraged. Clara met him at the door and read the sadness on his face before he spoke a word. She touched his arm gently. "Don't give up. Something better will come." He tried to believe her, but the doubt was heavy. The rest of the day passed slowly. He played with the children, fixed a broken chair in the house, and tried to keep busy. But every quiet moment brought the same thought: what now? That evening, he sat on the porch, watching the sun sink below the horizon. The sky glowed orange, fading to purple as darkness crept in. Neighbors passed by, some offering friendly nods, others stopping to talk. One elderly man from down the street sat with him for a while. "Daniel," the man said, "I heard what happened. Don't lose hope. Sometimes life closes one door to open another. You did good by that woman. Good deeds have a way of coming back to you." Daniel listened, grateful for the encouragement. He smiled, though deep inside he still felt uncertain. When the man left, Daniel remained on the porch, lost in thought. The cool night air brushed against his face, and for a moment, he felt a small sense of peace. Later, as the stars filled the sky, Clara joined him. She sat beside him quietly, holding his hand. They didn't need many words. Her presence alone was enough to remind him that he was not alone in this struggle. But when the family finally went to bed, the worries returned once again. Daniel lay awake for hours, staring into the darkness. He thought about going to the city to look for work. He thought about selling some of his tools to get through the week. He even thought about swallowing his pride and going back to beg Mr. Carson for forgiveness, though the thought made his chest burn. Eventually, exhaustion pulled him into a shallow sleep. And in that sleep, he dreamed not of cars or garages, but of the old woman he had helped. He saw her riding her bicycle, smiling, and waving to him. He heard her words again, "The world needs more people like you." The dream felt so real that when he woke before dawn, her voice still echoed in his ears. The street outside was quiet, the sky still dark. Daniel sat at the edge of his bed, rubbing his eyes. He felt a strange mix of fear and hope. Something deep inside told him that his story was not finished yet, that something unexpected was waiting for him. He did not know what it was, but he felt it in his bones. He could not have guessed that in just a few hours, his life would change again, and this time, in a way he could never have imagined. The morning after Daniel's restless night began like any other day, at least for a short while. The first rays of the sun painted the sky in soft orange and pink, and the streets outside his little home were quiet. The town was only just beginning to wake up. Daniel was still sitting at the small wooden table in the kitchen, sipping a cup of tea Clara had made for him. The children were playing in the corner, laughing as they stacked wooden blocks on top of each other. He tried to smile at their games, but his heart was still heavy. The thought of being jobless pressed on him with every passing second. He had decided that after breakfast, he would go into town again, maybe knock on a few doors, maybe try places beyond the garages he had visited the day before. Something inside him whispered that he couldn't give up yet. But then, just as he stood up to wash his empty cup, a strange sound broke the calm of the morning. It was a low hum at first, like the growl of an engine. Then another, and another. Daniel frowned and moved toward the window. The sound grew louder and closer, until it was no longer just one engine, but many, rumbling together like thunder rolling into the neighborhood. Clara noticed his worried expression. "What is it?" she asked, coming closer. "I don't know," Daniel replied, his eyes narrowing as he pulled the curtain aside. At that very moment, his heart almost stopped. Rolling down the narrow street toward his little house were 7 black SUVs, shiny and imposing, moving in a perfect line. They looked completely out of place in the small, quiet town. Their engines were deep and powerful, and their dark windows gave no clue of who was inside. The neighbors began stepping out of their houses, murmuring in surprise. Children stopped their games and pointed. Dogs barked nervously. Nobody in that neighborhood had ever seen such a sight before. Daniel's heart raced. "Why are they coming here?" he whispered to himself. His hands trembled slightly as the first SUV slowed down and stopped right in front of his house. The other 6 followed, parking neatly behind it, blocking the entire street. Clara placed a hand on his arm. "Daniel, what's happening? Do you know these people?" He shook his head quickly. "No. I've never seen anything like this." Before he could say more, the doors of the SUVs opened one by one, and tall men in dark suits stepped out. They looked serious, moving with quiet discipline, like trained security guards. Their presence made the neighbors whisper even louder, their eyes wide with curiosity and fear. Daniel's chest tightened. His first thought was that Mr. Carson had done something, maybe reported him for some reason, though he couldn't imagine why. His second thought was even more frightening, that these people had mistaken him for someone else. Then, from the second SUV, a woman stepped out slowly. She was dressed in a neat coat and wore simple glasses. She moved with calm dignity, and though she was surrounded by guards, there was something gentle in her expression. Daniel's eyes widened in shock. It was her. The same elderly woman he had helped just 2 days ago with her broken bicycle. Only now, she didn't look like a tired old lady struggling with groceries. She looked important, even powerful, as though her presence commanded respect from everyone around her. Daniel opened the door and stepped onto the porch, still confused. His neighbors leaned over their fences, whispering in disbelief. Clara stayed behind him, holding the children close. The woman walked toward him with a warm smile. "Mr. Daniel," she said in a calm but clear voice. "I hope we are not disturbing your morning." Daniel blinked, trying to find his words. "Ma'am, it's you. The bicycle. I didn't expect," he trailed off, unable to finish. She laughed softly, her eyes kind. "Yes, it's me. But I must confess, I wasn't entirely honest with you that day. You see, I am not just a simple old lady who shops for groceries. My name is Margaret Thompson. My family owns several businesses across the country. And these gentlemen you see are my security team." The crowd of neighbors gasped quietly. Daniel could hardly believe what he was hearing. He looked at her with confusion, his mind spinning. "But, why are you here?" he asked finally, his voice low. She stepped closer and placed a hand gently on his arm. "Because kindness like yours should never go unnoticed. That day, you stopped your work to help me without expecting anything in return. You didn't care who I was, or what you might gain. You saw a tired old woman struggling, and you helped. That kind of heart is rare." Daniel felt his face grow warm. He glanced around nervously as the neighbors leaned even closer, hanging on to every word. Mrs. Thompson continued, "When I returned home, I told my son what had happened. He was deeply touched, because we believe that people who show true kindness are the ones who deserve opportunities. So, we came today to see you. I have an offer for you, Daniel." Daniel's heart pounded. An offer? From a woman like her? He struggled to find words. I don't understand." She smiled gently. "I would like you to work with us. My foundation has a mechanical division that maintains vehicles and equipment for community projects. We need someone trustworthy, someone with skill and heart. You have both. The position comes with better pay, stability, and most importantly, respect. Would you consider joining us?" The entire neighborhood seemed to fall silent at her words. Even the children stopped whispering. Everyone was waiting for Daniel's response. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He felt overwhelmed, his mind a whirl of emotions: relief, disbelief, joy, and even fear. He thought of his children, of Clara, of the long night he had just endured. He thought of Mr. Carson, who had thrown him out like a useless tool. And now, here he stood, being offered something far greater than he had ever dreamed. Clara stepped forward, her eyes shining with tears. She took Daniel's hand and whispered, "Say yes. This is the answer we were waiting for." Daniel looked back at Mrs. Thompson. His voice trembled slightly, but his words were steady. "Ma'am, I don't know how to thank you. I never expected anything for helping you. I only did what I felt was right. But if you believe I can be of use to you, then yes. I would be honored to work with your foundation." Mrs. Thompson's smile widened, and her eyes glowed with warmth. "That is wonderful. You have no idea how happy this makes me. My team will give you all the details. But for now, Daniel, hold your head high. You did the right thing, and now life is giving you back more than you lost." The neighbors began to clap softly, some even cheering. For once, the little street was filled with excitement, not gossip. Children waved, and the men in suits stood respectfully by, allowing the moment to unfold naturally. Daniel felt his chest grow lighter than it had in days. The heavy stone of worry was lifted, replaced by something brighter hope. He looked at his wife and children, who were smiling through their tears, and he knew that this was a new beginning. But somewhere in the back of his mind, he also thought of Mr. Carson. What would he say when he heard about this? Daniel had no desire for revenge, but he couldn't help but wonder how the man who valued only money would react to the truth that kindness, not profit, had brought him to a place of greater success than before. As the SUVs prepared to leave, Mrs. Thompson turned one last time and said, "We'll be in touch soon, Daniel. Rest well today. Tomorrow, your new journey begins." And with that, the powerful vehicles rolled away, leaving behind a street buzzing with amazement and a man whose life had just taken a turn he could never have predicted. The morning after the black SUVs left Daniel's street was unlike any other he had ever experienced. For the first time in many days, he woke with a sense of peace in his heart instead of worry. He could still hear the powerful sound of those engines in his memory and see the smiling face of Mrs. Thompson as she offered him a new chance in life. When he opened the door that morning, the neighborhood was already alive with whispers. Neighbors who had watched everything yesterday now gathered in small groups, talking with excitement. Some waved at Daniel, their smiles wide. Others called out, "We're proud of you, Daniel," or "That's what kindness does." He returned their greetings humbly, though part of him still found it hard to believe all of it had truly happened. Clara set breakfast on the table, her face glowing with joy. She kissed his cheek and said, "Daniel, yesterday was just the beginning. I know in my heart that great things are coming for you." Their children laughed and clapped, too young to understand everything but old enough to feel the happiness filling their little home. By mid-morning, one of the men in suits returned, carrying papers and information about the new position Mrs. Thompson had promised. He explained everything carefully to Daniel: his role, his responsibilities, and the generous pay he would receive. Daniel listened with gratitude, each word making him feel lighter. He would not only have enough to care for his family, but also a chance to work in an environment where kindness was valued, not punished. That night, as Daniel lay in bed beside Clara, he whispered, "I still can't believe all of this. Yesterday I was worrying about how to put food on the table, and today I have a future brighter than I ever imagined." Clara smiled in the dark and replied, "You see, Daniel, kindness always finds its way back. You planted a seed, and now it's giving fruit." The following week, Daniel began his new job. The foundation's mechanical division was not like the greasy, loud garage he had worked in before. It was well organized, clean, and filled with people who respected each other. Here, the workers were encouraged to help one another, and the focus was not only on money but also on serving communities. Daniel was given the role of supervisor, and for the first time, he felt truly valued. He threw himself into the work with passion, leading his team with fairness and honesty. Whenever someone needed help, he was there. Whenever a mistake was made, he guided with patience. His new colleagues quickly grew to admire him, not just for his skill, but for his character. Daniel was no longer just another mechanic, he was a leader, trusted and respected. Meanwhile, back at Mr. Carson's garage, things began to change. News of what had happened spread far and wide. People in the town learned how Daniel had been fired for showing kindness, and how that very kindness had brought him a greater opportunity. Many customers felt disgusted by Carson's behavior. Slowly, one by one, they stopped bringing their cars to his garage. Carson noticed the difference quickly. His once busy shop grew quieter, and his profits dropped. The workers, too, lost their spirit. They missed Daniel's steady presence, his helpful nature, and his encouraging words. Without him, the garage felt colder. Some even left to find work elsewhere, unwilling to endure Carson's harshness any longer. One afternoon, as Carson sat alone in his office, he heard two customers talking outside. "That mechanic, Daniel, he's the one working with Mrs. Thompson now. They say he's doing great things there. Carson made a big mistake letting him go. Those words stung more than Carson wanted to admit. He had always believed that money ruled everything, but now he saw that people cared about character, too. He had fired Daniel for being too kind, and that kindness had made him more successful than Carson himself. As weeks turned into months, Daniel continued to thrive in his new role. He not only repaired machines but also helped design community projects that used his skills. Schools, hospitals, and shelters benefited from his work. He was invited to meetings, where his voice was respected and his ideas were valued. Every day, he returned home with pride, his heart full of gratitude. His children noticed the difference, too. They would run to him when he came home, shouting, "Papa, tell us about your day." And he would share small stories about the projects he worked on, teaching them that true success comes not just from hard work, but from doing good. One evening, Mrs. Thompson herself visited Daniel's workshop. She watched him as he instructed his team, his hands moving with skill, his words calm but firm. When he finally noticed her, he quickly stood and greeted her respectfully. She smiled warmly. "Daniel, I knew you were the right choice. Look how much life you have brought into this place. My father used to say, the best hands to trust are the ones that help without asking for anything in return. You are proof of those words." Daniel bowed his head humbly. "Thank you, ma'am. I only do what I can." But deep down, he knew he had come far. From being humiliated and thrown out by a boss who valued nothing but money, to being honored and trusted by people who valued his heart, his journey was a reminder that every act of kindness has a purpose, even if we cannot see it right away. As time passed, Daniel's story became well known in the town. People told it to their children, reminding them that helping others is never wasted. Some even came to Daniel for advice, asking him how he stayed strong when life seemed unfair. He always gave the same answer: do good anyway. Even if no one sees it, even if it costs you something. In the end, goodness always finds its way back. 1 year later, on a sunny afternoon, Daniel walked past his old garage. The once busy place was nearly empty now, with only a couple of cars parked outside. Carson stood near the entrance, his shoulders slumped. For a moment, their eyes met. Daniel felt no anger, no bitterness. He only nodded politely and kept walking. He did not need revenge. Life itself had already shown the difference between them. One man had chosen greed, and lost. Another had chosen kindness, and gained everything. When Daniel returned home that evening, Clara and the children were waiting at the door, their smiles lighting up the little house. He hugged them tightly, his heart swelling with gratitude. As the sun set behind the hills, Daniel sat on his porch and thought about how far life had brought him. He remembered the old lady's bicycle, the heavy words of his boss, the sleepless nights, and the sound of the SUVs in his driveway. Each moment had been a step in his journey, leading him to where he was now. He realized something then, that life often tests us with small choices. We may not know at the time how important those choices are. But the way we treat others, even in small things, can shape our future. And so, Daniel smiled into the evening light, knowing in his heart that he had chosen rightly. For him, the lesson was clear: kindness is never weakness, and every good deed returns in ways we may never expect.